Previously on Old Recipes. After finding an old cookbook, our main character decided to try some of its recipes. Some were good, some not so much. But one was almost a success. She tried to do a chocolate pudding recipe from the 19th century, but mistakes were made. The instructions were not clear. And the result was a bit disappointing. But she didn't want to give up and decided to take revenge. Hi, if you saw episode 9 of this series, you know that I tried to follow the chocolate pudding recipe of this book, but the texture was a bit disappointing. To sum it up, 2 elements may have caused the bad results. I made a mistake and put too many eggs, and I may or may not have cooked the pudding for too long. But I wanted to try it again, as I think it has great potential. So I did what anybody else would do and researched for some answer on the internet. I came across different types of traditional pudding recipes, which had the same ingredients as mine. However, they all had different cooking techniques. So I thought, why not try out all these techniques to see which one works the best and use that excuse to make different pudding flavors. So this is what we are doing today. 4 different types of pudding: chocolate, vanilla, orange blossom, and celery. This one is exciting, as it could either go terribly or deliciously. This time, I divided the quantities given in the recipe by 2, and I made no mistakes. Let's start with the chocolate one. I put 150 grams of chocolate in a pot, and I slowly poured half a liter of milk into it. I added 56 grams of sugar and let it boil until it reached a thick consistency. Then I turned off the heat. I blended 1 egg yolk with 1 whole egg and poured them into the pot. When everything was well mixed, I strained and put it in yogurt jars. This time, I use a different bain-marie technique, which consists of boiling some water in a pot or a pan and putting the jars directly in the water. I let it cook for 25 minutes, then I took them out of the pot and let them cool down. While the chocolate pudding cools down, let's go do the orange blossom one. Same as for the chocolate, I boiled half a liter of milk and 56 grams of sugar and waited until it thickened. Then I turned off the heat. I blended 2 egg yolks with 1 whole egg and 1.5 tablespoons of orange blossom. When the milk was cold, I pulled the eggs and stirred everything. Then, just like last time, I strained them and poured them into yogurt jars. I was apparently extremely optimistic about the number of jars I could make. Then this time, the pudding are going directly to the fridge for 24 hours. Now, vanilla. You know the drill: half a liter of milk, 50 grams of sugar, boiling, and this time I added a whole vanilla pod. It had to infuse for 15 minutes. Then I turned off the heat. While it was cooling down, I blended 1 whole egg and 2 egg yolks that I added to the rest. Strain everything and put it into yogurt jars, but this time it is a bain-marie in the oven. I cooked them for 1 hour at 130 degrees. If you are doing this recipe and using yogurt jars like me, make sure to put them in the oven and then turn on the oven to avoid temperature shock. Before I show you the result, let's do the last and most intriguing one: celery. This one starts a bit differently than the others. I first had to peel and chop half a celery. Then I put half a liter of milk to boil and infused the celery for 30 minutes. Then I fished out the celery and turned off the heat. During that time, I mixed 4 egg yolks and 56 grams of sugar together. When the milk was cold, I poured the eggs and stirred until it had an homogeneous consistency. Next, as usual, I strained and poured it into small containers. As it is going to cook at 180 degrees, I thought it was safer to not use the yogurt jars, as I was afraid they might break. So I used those ones. I was supposed to leave them for only 15 minutes, but as the containers were big, I left them for 30 minutes in the oven. And here are the results. Based on the look of it, the ones which were cooked in the oven, the celery and the vanilla, seem to have the best textures, with no little bubbles like the chocolate one. The orange blossom was way too liquid. I can already tell that the fridge technique did not work. So let me cook it like I cooked the chocolate pudding in episode 9, while I tried the others. The chocolate pudding was way better than last time. The top part had a perfect texture. You can really taste the chocolate. However, the bottom was turning a bit soggy like last time, so maybe it should have been in the pan for a bit less time. I also find it to be too heavy for my taste. You have chocolate, eggs, sugar and milk. Everything is just a bit too much. Now the celery. The texture is really good. a bit firm, but still nice. The flavor is so unusual, it is very pleasant to eat. Of course, you have to like the taste of celery to enjoy this, but if you do, you will really like it. It is quite unique. I feel like I'm eating at a very fancy restaurant right now. However, the taste is quite strong, so I could not eat the entire jar in one time. Now, vanilla. Look at that texture, it's perfect. Exactly what you would want from a pudding. It is really like a crème brûlée, but without the sugar crust on top. It's melting in your mouth, the vanilla taste is there, it's very nice. And finally, the orange blossom. I was afraid the texture was not going to be good because of the little bubbles, but it's actually quite nice. Maybe a tad too firm. I think cooking them for only maybe 10 minutes would have been perfect. The cooking timing is really hard to get in those puddings. A 1 minute difference and the whole thing is ruined. The taste was nice. I would have preferred to feel more the orange blossom and less the eggs. Overall, I think the best cooking technique for those recipes was to cook them in the oven. If you prefer your pudding to be firm, do it for a short period of time at 100 degrees. But if you want to have them the texture closer to a crème brûlée, cook them at 130 degrees for 1 hour. For the taste, they were all good. But I think the celery stole the show. It was so unexpected. I have never in my life tried something like that. To be honest, all those recipes felt a bit heavy to me. I used so many eggs, it's crazy. In the modern version, usually people replace some of the eggs with corn flour to thicken the milk, which is probably a bit easier to digest. I am glad I solved the mystery of why last time did not work, and I wish in the cookbook that they would tell you to be careful with the cooking time. As we have reached more than 1,000 subscribers on my channel, I wanted to thank you with a little bonus recipe, not from the cookbook this time, but one of my recipes. Like you saw in this video, with those puddings I had a lot of egg whites left, so I decided to make financier. To do so, you will need 50 grams of flour, 75 grams of sugar, 50 grams of almond flour, a bit of salt, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Stir everything together, then you have to whip up 4 egg whites and carefully mix them into the rest. This is the texture you should have. Then add 75 grams of melted butter. If you have a financier or a muffin mold, you can butter them up and pour the batter in. But if you are like me, you can just use a rectangular mold with parchment paper. Then bake it for 20 minutes at 180 degrees and voila! Delicious and fluffy financier. Okay, now I'm going to need a break from baking dessert because this was intense. Thanks again for your support. I'm always happy to read your comments and I try to respond to everyone. Don't hesitate to like or subscribe and I will see you next time for more recipes from the 19th century.